This is CBN NewsWatch.
Thanks for joining us for CBN Newswatch. I'm Wendy Griffith. We begin this half hour with news from the Middle East, where President Donald Trump has issued a stark warning to Hamas as his administration sanctions groups tied to their financing. Also, significant shifts underway in Syria, Lebanon, and Iran. Joshua Swanson has more on our top story.
Tensions remain high across the Middle East as the United States, Israel, and regional powers take new actions involving Gaza, Lebanon, Iran, and Syria. U.S. President Donald Trump issued another warning to Hamas to disarm while speaking at the World Economic Forum in Davos, which it was required to do under the Gaza ceasefire agreement.
If they don't do it, they'll be blown away very quickly.
His comments came as the U.S. Treasury Department announced new sanctions against 6 Gaza-based organizations and the Popular Conference for Palestinians Abroad, accusing them of supporting Hamas's Izz al-Din al-Qassam military brigades. And here in Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has accepted an invitation to join Trump's Board of Peace. Egypt has announced it also will participate, while Sweden and Norway have rejected invitations. Italy reportedly believes joining the board could violate its constitution. President Trump praised the group and its mission.
This is the greatest board ever assembled, and everybody wants to be on it. But yeah, I have some controversial people on it, but these are people that get the job done.
On Israel's northern front, Israeli airstrikes targeted Hezbollah infrastructure and weapons storage sites in Lebanon, following evacuation warnings in 3 villages. The Israeli military also struck 4 crossings along the Lebanon-Syria border, saying they were used by Hezbollah to smuggle weapons. In Iran, the government released its first official death toll from recent protests, saying 3,117 people were killed nationwide. State television said 2,427 were civilians and security forces, referring to them as martyrs and denying responsibility for the deaths. But in a recent interview on CBN's Jerusalem Dateline, activist Goldie Gamari described a different reality.
The number is unconfirmed, but we're hearing of at least 30,000, if not more. It is the single largest massacre of Iranians by the Islamic dictatorship since they took over in 1979.
In northern Syria, following recent violent clashes, government forces have taken control of the Al-Hol camp, which houses thousands of terrorists linked to ISIS. The move comes as a truce with Kurdish fighters appears to be holding, and as the U.S.-backed and Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces move closer to merging into the Syrian military. Turkish President Erdogan voiced support for the development.
We have repeatedly said that we will not tolerate a separatist structure on Turkey's southern borders that would threaten our country's security. As neighbors and brothers, we wholeheartedly support the Syrian state.
Using the new Syrian government as a proxy, Erdogan's neo-Ottoman foreign policy is seeking to expand his regional influence. Turkey strongly opposes the SDF, which it designates as a terrorist organization. Joshua Swanson, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thanks, Joshua. And Chris Mitchell is with us now from beautiful Jerusalem. Chris, what more can you tell us about Hamas disarming?
Well, Wendy, they deny that they ever even agreed to hand over their weapons. They say they have a right of resistance. They talk about a gradual or a conditional process, and that only after the quote-unquote occupation ends in Gaza, referring to the IDF in Israel. They will transfer their weapons to a future Palestinian state. But as we said in Joshua's report, if they don't disarm, it will end badly. He said it will be their end. Presumably, what this all means, Wendy, is that the IDF will have to go back and disarm Hamas. Right now, the Gaza Strip is basically split in two between the IDF and Hamas. Hamas, on that hand, Wendy, has really had months to prepare, to replenish, to rearm. They're using the international aid as well. And yet the IDF does have a plan to take over the rest of Gaza. They'll have to get a green light by Netanyahu and the political coalition here, but also presumably from the U.S. and President Trump, whether or not they're going to be able to go back in to Gaza and take it over once and for all.
Chris, and in neighboring Syria, lots going on. What can you tell us about the latest there?
You know, Joshua alluded to it in his report. There's really atrocities going on by the Syrian army. That's what we're seeing, the videos coming out of Syria. We've actually seen an ISIS flag flying over Raqqa in Syria, and that brings back bad memories of when ISIS took over parts of Iraq and Syria. According to Kurdish forces, that's what they're saying. The SDF, the Syrian Democratic Forces, they were the ones who fought ISIS, and now they're saying ISIS is back in the form of the Syrian Arab Army, which they say many are ISIS sympathizers, and even some members. They're seeing ISIS emblems on some of the soldiers. And right now we're seeing videos of desecrating Kurdish graves, ethnic cleansing, beheading, giving Kurdish girls to their sheikhs. And then we see that the fact that there are ISIS prisoners that have been released. And what this all means, Wendy, could be the end of what was northeast Syria, an autonomous region that really had been a democracy. We've been there. CBN News has been there reporting on it. But right now, according to an SDF spokesman, they're facing genocide. Senator Lindsey Graham says they're going to be holding hearings on this. He's calling for perhaps renewed sanctions on the Syrian regime. And, you know, at the end of Joshua's report, there was Turkey is really against Kurdish independence. And so it's very disheartening for many people to see that the Kurds are really coming against the Syrian army. And some people are saying, don't weaken the Kurds. And that's what their appeal is right now to President Trump, that they would be protected, they would monitor the ISIS prisoners, and that would be a political solution to what's happening in northeast Syria right now.
Wow, thanks for breaking that down, Chris. Well, does Israel believe they'll go to war again with Hezbollah and Hamas?
It feels that way, you know, and up on the northern border for Hamas, the IDF is hitting Hezbollah targets on a daily basis. Their infrastructure operatives, they believe the Lebanese army is failing to disarm Hezbollah, as they have pledged they would. So they may believe they have to go back on the ground. And in terms of Hamas, as I said, it looks like the IDF may have to go back to war against Hamas. Both Hezbollah and Hamas have been severely degraded, but they still pose a threat to Israel on Israel's southern and northern border. And it does look like war may be breaking out again with Hezbollah and Hamas.
Seems like the war never really ends, truly. But, Chris, how soon does the Abraham Lincoln Carrier Group get into the region, and what does that signal?
Well, it could be a matter of hours, Wendy. I've heard that. I've had estimates of 3 days, but very, very soon. And what it does is signal that the U.S. is serious about deterring the Iranian regime. It puts these military options on the table for President Trump, puts pressure on the Iranian regime, reassures allies like Israel in the region. Yet on the inside, the internet is still down, Wendy. One doctor, as we reported a few days ago, calls what's happening a genocide in digital darkness. And Lindsey Graham, as I said again, he's saying that, you know, some people in the administration are saying they can talk to the Ayatollah. But he says talking to the Ayatollah is sort of like talking to Hitler. But we'll see what happens in the next few days, why it's so important to be praying what's happening in Iran here in the Middle East.
Absolutely. Chris Mitchell, thank you for keeping your finger on the pulse of everything that's going on in the Middle East. So much. Truly impressive how you do it. But anyway, we so appreciate your insights and look forward to hearing from you again very soon. God bless you. Well, here at home, millions of Americans are bracing for a potential snow and ice storm. Preparations are underway as the storm system will stretch thousands of miles from the south to the northeast. A state of emergency is already declared in the Carolinas. Ice and snow will affect travel, with major airlines already waiving rebooking fees for those who will be impacted. Forecasters warn this could be one of the most historic ice storms in modern history. Well, former police officer Adrian Gonzales was found not guilty of charges that he failed his duty to confront the gunman in the Uvalde Texas Elementary school shooting that killed 19 children and 2 teachers. The nearly 3-week trial included emotional testimony from teachers who shot and survived. Back in 2022, nearly 400 officers rushed to the school where 77 minutes passed before a tactical team entered the classroom to confront and kill the gunman. Gonzales was one of the 2 officers indicted. Coming up, President Trump is threatening very strong actions if Iran proceeds with executions of protesters. We'll speak to a global security analyst who breaks down America's approach to Iran. Stay with us. You're watching CBN News Watch. The USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Group is nearing the coast of Iran, ready to strike if the commander-in-chief pulls the trigger. What are President Trump's military options in response to the regime's bloody crackdown against its own people? Might he capture the Ayatollah and bring him to justice like he did with Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro? Well, this week on The Global Lane, global security analyst Michael Letts joins us to break down why America's approach to Iran has remained unchanged since the uprisings began.
Demanding freedom and removal from the corruption of the government that is in place, the administration, the Ayatollah is there. We had said that we would be backing the dissidents, and the backing that we were implying at the time was let the dissidents regain their freedom in their country. And the administration there needed to leave them alone. What do we mean by leave them alone? Don't harm them. Don't execute them. Don't massacre them. That was the understanding. That's what happened to begin with. They began to protest in the streets and began to do so peacefully, but there began to be more and more of them. The Ayatollahs and them got scared. They decided that this may be a threat to their administration. So they went up to their old plans. They began to make arrests. And then when the arrests didn't work too well, they began to actually shoot people in the streets. You got a very clear warning from this administration, from the President Trump, and that was that for those who are killing the dissidents, we will be keeping a list and keeping track. Now, what did that do to make that? These generals of the Revolutionary Guard who are implementing these plans to kill these dissidents are now going to be held accountable, even when an administration falls and their new administration comes in. And so now they're pulling out all stops. First of all, they thought that they would issue a national rally cry that all of Iran needed to join in together to fight the great Satan. Who's the great Satan? It's, of course, the United States and Israel. That fell on deaf ears. And they begin to execute again. And they begin to tell the United States that if you get involved or intervene with our decisions to kill dissidents, it will mean war. Well, that's not going to scare this president. It's not going to scare and make us change from doing the right thing. The fact of the matter is these people deserve freedom. They deserve the right to be able to live without being under an oppressive regime. We have determined that we will back the dissidents. What does that mean? Well, it could mean a number of different things. We're already, right now, the president is using economic sanctions and putting the economic pressure on. We've also let them know that we were going to hold them accountable. So their military command structure is beginning to fall. We know now from our intelligence, we have intelligence in there, we have intelligence on the ground there, that the Ayatollah, his son, and many of the leaders there are now beginning to move their assets out of Iran to Dubai and to other places. Doesn't sound to me like it's a person that thinks he's going to keep his job long when he's moving his money around.
What would our special forces be up against if they tried to capture the Ayatollah like they did with Nicolas Maduro? Because I know it wouldn't be easy. It was easier in Venezuela, but I'm assuming it'd be much more difficult to snatch Khamenei from Iran.
Well, that would be a very accurate statement in the past. But let me let you know, and Iran is very well aware of this. What occurred in Venezuela was breathtaking for them. We didn't just go in and defeat a foe or security forces and pull out. We put into play military hardware unseen anywhere in the world before. Their own words, talking about Venezuela, was suddenly everything went blank, equipment, power, everything shut down. Then immediately, only 20 special force members came in. Suddenly, everyone was paralyzed. They were having nosebleeds, headaches, paralyzed. They couldn't move.
Those are sonic or directed energy weapons, are they not?
They are.
Could we use them in Iran?
To mention that, and we could do the same thing here. Iran knows it. So, it's not like the old days where we have to bring in thousands of special forces and fight it out on the streets. We can now make a concerted, direct assault, and be very successful in doing so. And you know that's in the back of their minds. It's so far in the back of their minds that they've got their planes on the runway waiting to extract these members, the Ayatollahs and all, and take them to Russia. Russia, we understand, has granted them asylum should they decide to take it. But they may not be able to get that far. They may not be able to get to those planes because they know that they're in our sights now. And when you have killed, and the estimate is, Gary, here's the thing, you have your human rights activists, they always downplay it. They're saying 3,000 to 4,000. You have those that are on the streets, those that are on the boots on the ground there, intelligence operations, and they estimate now between 16,500 and 20,000 dissidents have been massacred, with more to come. They've got tens of thousands in prison cells, and their intent is to publicly execute them all. We're not going to stand by and allow that to happen.
So the president has called for regime change. How likely is that to happen without U.S. military assistance? Protests have died down due to thousands of arrests and killings, as you mentioned.
I believe that that's just a lull. Quite frankly, our intelligence sources show that this has happened in the past. They crack down, there's a little bit of a lull, then they come back even harder. We expect them to be coming back harder very shortly. And when that occurs, we expect this regime will fall.
Okay, the Middle East and world are on edge, waiting to see what happens in Iran. Michael Letts, Invest USA, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Gary. God bless America.
Wow, fantastic interview, Gary. Also this week on the global lane, after the storming of a Minneapolis church, anti-ICE protests may soon heat up. And AI Jesus, now meet AI Doctor, how artificial intelligence is transforming American healthcare. You can watch that tonight on the CBN News Channel at 8 p.m. Eastern. You can also see it on the CBN News app or on YouTube. Still ahead, President Trump talks about Greenland to world leaders in Davos. We have details of his speech and why some Danish veterans are voicing outrage. Stay with us. You're watching CBN NewsWatch. Welcome back to CBN NewsWatch. President Trump is moving ahead with a deal to give the White House what it wants in Greenland. The president says details are still being worked out. Still, the president's comments before the agreement was reached sparked outrage among some Danish veterans who fought alongside American forces. Chuck Holton has the story from Greenland.
At the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, President Trump doubled down on his Greenland ambitions, claiming Denmark has failed to adequately defend the territory.
In 2019, Denmark said that they would spend over $200 million to strengthen Greenland's defenses. But as you know, they spent less than 1% of that amount. 1%, there's no sign of Denmark there. And I say that with great respect for Denmark, whose people I love, whose leaders are very good. It's the United States alone that can protect this giant mass of land, this giant piece of ice. And that's the reason I'm seeking immediate negotiations to once again discuss the acquisition of Greenland by the United States.
Trump insisted his plans would strengthen NATO.
But this would not be a threat to NATO. This would greatly enhance the security of the entire alliance.
Beneath all this snow and ice, there's billions or maybe trillions of dollars worth of natural gas and rare earth minerals. But most of the people who live here in Greenland would rather that it just stay there. They just don't want to spoil all this beauty in order to make a little bit more money.
For Danish veterans who served alongside American troops, Trump's words ring hollow. Denmark lost more than 50 soldiers in Afghanistan and Iraq.
I have good friends that were wounded. I have good friends and colleagues that were killed in both Iraq and Afghanistan. So, Danes have put down their lives to fight together with the U.S. for freedom and democracy. And I'm sure the Danes would do that again in the future. So it doesn't make any sense to say that Denmark is not good allies.
Colonel Soren Knudsen served 2 tours in Afghanistan. When Vice President Vance called Denmark a bad ally, he removed his U.S. Bronze Star from display.
I was very proud of getting it. I was very proud of having it, alongside other medals, obviously. But I also have to say that when J.D. Vance, it was broadcasted here that he called us a bad ally, I took this one off.
The U.S. already maintains a military presence in Greenland under a 1951 defense agreement, and veterans add sovereignty is not negotiable.
America was a lighthouse. It was the thing we were looking at. It was, until very recently, the beam in the darkness. And regrettably, that light is being switched off as we speak.
From Greenland, I'm Chuck Holton for CBN News.
Thank you, Chuck. Coming up, national treasures hitting the road. How you can see a piece of American history. Stay with us. Well, some good news for treasure seekers and history buffs. Some of the rarest documents in the nation's history are hitting the road in honor of America's 250th birthday. Artifacts from the U.S. Archives will be on display across the nation, including articles normally kept under lock and key in Washington, like the Treaty of Paris. The National Treasures will embark on an 8-city tour aboard the so-called Freedom Plane. The Freedom Plane tour runs from March until August and includes stops in places like Atlanta, LA, Miami, and Houston. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of CBN News Watch. Remember, you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel anytime or online with cbnnews.com. We hope you'll join us next time. From all of us here, have a great day and God bless you.